So it's a happy birthday week on this holiday week for President Biden. As we mentioned earlier, he turns 81 years young today, but concerns about his age and the fact that a lot of young people aren't really feeling him right now is leading to some disappointing polls. An NBC News poll finds for the first time former President Trump now has a 4-point lead among voters ages 18 to 34. This is a massive, massive bit of information. You know how much this matters to the Democratic Party. Following other recent polling does show that President Biden is losing ground with millennials and Gen Zers. As the Wall Street Journal puts it, President Biden keeps talking about the old days. Young voters don't like it. The report referencing the president's speeches, which frequently mention his long-ago work with leaders who have since passed away or may not be known to younger audiences. I don't know that that's why young voters are tuning out. I mean, this is a gentleman who has a penchant for nostalgia. A White House columnist for The Hill, Niall Stanage, is here. This is one of the ways that President Biden remains charming to Americans, is when he, waxes nostalgic and tells these stories almost like a sweet grandfather. It's one of the most likable representations of the president. How can they say young people are just saying, I don't get it, I don't get it? Like, I really think that it's because of platform issues, don't you think?
Yes, I do. I think that those people who talk about nostalgia being the problem or his propensity to look back at a previous era, that's not the problem. I mean, the problem is multifaceted, but that isn't it. I think it includes things like general concerns, not only, as we've talked about before, it's not the president's age on his birth certificate, it's the worries about his mental acuity, honestly. Then for young voters in particular, you have other issues like the student loans issue. And it's also, I think, very notable, Adrienne, that young voters are by far the most sympathetic to the Palestinians in the broad Israel-Palestinian conflict. And there's a lot of evidence that they are dissatisfied with the president's very staunch support of Israel over the past month or so.
Dissatisfied, but also in many cases disinformed. They just flatly do not have factual information to back up some of their claims, at least from what I'm seeing on social media. It's becoming less of a debate and more about who's educating our young people for the facts that they think are facts, which are false. But let's talk about how he's being perceived. I see your face. Do you want to respond to that, or do you want me to go on to the next topic?
Yeah, I don't really agree with you, but we can go on to the next topic if you like.
No, I welcome a disagreement, Niall, because I'm just telling you, there is one thing to say that compassion is important, but there are others who would call Hamas a known terror group. They consider them a viable political party in some circles. That is just flatly outrageous.
I agree that any defense of Hamas in the wake of that grotesque attack on October the 7th is outrageous. But I do not think that sympathy for the Palestinians is automatically the consequence of misinformation. There are legitimate reasons. Okay.
We're not arguing that at all. We would never argue that. I think there are a lot of Americans who are heartbroken over both what's happening in Gaza and what's happening in Israel. But the fact that there is blatant misinformation, and you can watch it in real time all over TikTok and Instagram, is concerning, to say the least. But let's talk about the Jewish community, who, I mean, you can go online. Again, I get a lot of my news from research. I get a lot of my surveying of the American people from Instagram and TikTok, and from conversations and comments left on articles like y'all's at The Hill. And there are members of the Jewish community who say President Biden is not doing enough to support Israel. So what is your read on that?
I've no doubt that that opinion exists in the Jewish community, within which there is an enormous diversity of opinion. On this show last week, we reported, Adrienne, on that fracas at the Democratic National Committee where there were protesters against police. Those protesters were from left-wing Jewish groups who wanted the president to call for a ceasefire, and Democratic lawmakers to support him in that. There was a poll done in the last few days. It showed that 74% of Jewish Americans approved of the president's handling of this war. That was, interestingly enough, slightly more than the percentage of Jewish Americans who gave him job approval overall, or who said they would vote for him against former President Trump. So clearly there's a range of views. No doubt that the view that you just articulated is part of that. there are other views as well.
Yeah.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find News Nation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.